10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
In a world full of rules, regulations, policies, annoying principles. Welcome, it's Aaron and Darryl with your brain on. God. We've got a Buku episode. Buku. Count Dooku episode.
Buku,
Crooked
Count
lightsaber episode. We're talking about Patch Adams today, okay? And we're talking about the way that Patch Adams seems to transcend the movie Patch Adams. This guy named Patch Adams.
The guy, the movie.
The guy, the movie, the man, the myth, the legend. Okay, Robin Williams. He's beautiful. Okay, we're talking today about how transcending the rules for a greater purpose of loving the individual, the people, the community around you is really, I think, a way of life that God has called us into as human beings, not being bound up by all of the strict regulations and rules like the Pharisees got, but living as Jesus did, seeing a higher way of love for people around him. And so it's going to be an exciting episode, maybe a little bit challenging for some of our type 1 on the Enneagram rule followers, but living in the mysterious unknown of choosing the way of love, the law of love, instead of living by the law. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
Woo! Enjoy the episode. Ding dong!
Hello.
It's me.
Who are you?
I'm you.
Really?
It's your conscious talking, Darryl.
How did I know?
You didn't, you asked.
Wow. I didn't even know.
Well, now you do. I'm inside of you. I am you.
You are me. Wait, I rang the doorbell?
You rang your own doorbell to your mind.
And answered the own door. The own door.
The own door. I had a friend named Ondor in high school.
Ondor.
Ondor. Yeah. I never actually learned his name.
And you just called him Ondor?
I just called him Ondor. Just What's up, all of our boggies?
Hello.
Oh my gosh, we're back. I hope you've enjoyed a little Darryl's conscious talk right there.
Yeah.
It was a short
That's what
one.
I sound like.
That's what you sound like in your brain. See, I actually, I think Darryl at some point will get so close that I start to think through you.
I think that we have been so close that your thoughts are my thoughts.
Do you think you...
Sometimes I hear you thinking in my head.
Wait, no, you...
No.
No?
No, I was not serious, but
Whoa.
maybe one day. I don't know.
That's crazy. Actually, Christina, one of my leaders at work, I woke up the other day and her voice was in my head and she was talking to me.
She was talking to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she said this. It was actually very strange. She said, hollow things go in hollow things.
What did that mean for you?
And I said, that's good.
Wow.
That is good. I think it actually meant, the way that I took it, I felt kind of like it was God talking to me through Christina's voice, through my leader, both of our leaders,
Yeah.
Christina's voice.
I've had moments of that with her and with other people, not where I felt that they were talking to me, but I've had
Maybe I'm just crazy, dude.
Maybe I just interpreted it differently.
maybe I just have
think
voices in my head.
How would this person respond to this?
Right.
I do that often.
Right.
And I think about our leader. I think, how would she handle this?
Yeah.
Or sometimes I'll hear somebody else's response in my head.
Right. Yeah. No, totally. I
Yeah.
was listening to this guy, Dan Moeller, for so long. And I would do that all the time. Like I would meet a situation. I would be like, how would Dan handle this situation? I would think that to myself all the time. Or I would hear his voice in my head. It can get damaging. Because then it's like, no, Aaron, what would you do?
Right.
At some point you got to break off from other people, but I think it's good to have like people inside your head telling you
that inspire you.
Or
people that you look up to.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, but she said hollow things go in hollow things.
I still don't know what that meant for you.
I thought it meant like hollow people basically fill themselves with hollow things, or if you fill yourself with hollow things, you'll become a hollow person. That's how I took it. Right.
If you fill yourself with hollow things, like empty things, you'll become an empty person.
You'll become an empty person.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's how I took it.
How would you quote that? Would that be Christina in my mind?
I don't know. Yeah, it's like, it's kind of weird because it's almost like 3 in 1, you know?
Has she ever did she ever actually say that to you?
No.
It's just you thought that in your head, but it was Christina's
voice. Yes. I thought it was like very loud too. It was like she was talking in my ear.
Whoa.
Hollow things. Go into hollow things. I just think that's an interesting way to put it, Christina. Thank you if you're listening to this podcast.
Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you for your wisdom in my mind.
Transcendently shared
through God. It feels almost like, yeah, God was speaking to me through Christina in my own mind.
God is speaking to you through your idea of Christina. She didn't actually ever say that to you.
Because she's never said that.
But who she represents said that to you.
Right. But this is the weird thing though. I would never say that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It wasn't like you're going to make it through, Aaron. You know?
Yeah.
That seems like pretty generic.
Yeah.
Who says hollow things go in hollow things?
I guess Christina.
I guess Christina says it. I don't know. I told her about it too. I told her this past week that she said that. And she was like, ooh, that's deep. And she's like, what does that mean?
That's what I was thinking. So what does that mean to you?
I don't know. I had to interpret as I wished. But anyway.
But that's good. Empty. If you fill yourself with empty things, you become empty.
You become an empty person, yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to be a hollow person. I think that's a good way to put it too. Hollow. You know what I'm saying? It's like it looks like it has substance on the outside, but on the inside it's empty.
Right. It's like there's a shape and a form, but there's nothing inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it has like a general structure. It's something that you can see, but it's not as strong as that thing it's not as strong as you might think it. It's not as strong as it seems.
It's like biting into a pie. And all you see is the crust, and you take a bite, and it's just crust, and there's nothing inside.
Jeez, that is a bad experience.
That's disappointing.
I don't think I've ever had a pie that was hollow.
An empty pie? You never had an empty pie?
No. What are you talking about? There's an empty pie?
No. I hope not.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be an empty pie.
It's like those chocolates that are hollow chocolates,
yes.
you know? And then you take a bite and it's only like a centimeter on, not even a millimeter on each side, and it's hollow on the inside. And it's like, I thought you were going to give me some substance right now.
Yeah.
Some people are like that. It's like you take a bite and it's just like...
He's like, geez, come on.
Come on now.
You know any filling in there?
Yeah. Have some substance, man.
Have some substance.
So I guess the opposite would be if you fill yourself with substantial things, you'll become a substantial person.
Substantial.
The problem is, not the problem, the tricky thing is, I guess, which could be a problem, is that substantial things are harder to get through, you know what I mean? They're usually harder to actually take in.
Harder to take in, harder to process.
Mm-hmm.
Takes more time and effort.
Right.
And energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hollow things are easy.
Hollow things are easy to get through. They're easy to chop down.
Easy but empty.
Easy to digest. Ooh, easy but empty. I was in the gym the other day and I had this catchphrase. I was like, I'm lifting heavy, but I'm feeling light. I thought that was cool.
Lifting heavy but feeling light.
Lifting heavy but feeling light, man.
You take that with you outside of the gym?
I'm trying to. I think so. I think that's what I'm talking about. You like lift substantial things in your life, but you keep it light, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you do good. What is it? Hard things make hard people. Good people. Good thing. We
do hard things.
Do hard things. Yeah,
that's the thing.
Hard thing make good people.
Hard thing make good people.
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah,
that's good.
But yeah, you're taking substantial things. Anyway,
substantial. Speaking of substantial things.
Whoa! What a transition we have for you today. Today we're talking about something that's just so awesome.
Yeah.
What is it, Darryl?
Well, we recently both watched the movie Patch Adams.
Come on.
Again, I mean, not for the first time, but we rewatched it.
It's my favorite movie, guys.
You know, Aaron told me that this was his favorite movie, and he, I remember him talking about, before we watched the movie.
Why are you talking about me like I'm not here?
Because I'm talking to the people.
Okay.
But Aaron, whenever you told me that, that you looked up the Patch, and I remember you saying, I want to be like Patch
I want to
Adams.
be like Patch Adams.
Yeah. And so when I watched the movie, so many times throughout it, I was thinking, Aaron totally wants to be this guy.
I totally want to be this guy.
This person represents the thing that Aaron wants to become.
Right. Basically, the whole premise of the movie is it's this guy. It's played by Robin Williams. Rest in peace, Robin Williams, the man, the myth, the legend. And he goes into, in the beginning of the movie, he checks himself into an asylum, an insane asylum. And basically, he wants to commit suicide. And and then he meets all of these people inside the asylum that are crazy, but he starts to he starts to take a liking to them, right? So he has this doctor that's taking care of him, and he's like kind of counseling him, but the doctor's super checked out. And he's like, there's this scene when he's with the doctor and he just like starts saying random things. He's like, I could blow stuff up with my farts or something like that. And the doctor's like, good. And he's like, well, we'll see you next week, and he's not even paying attention. Right. And what happens is he starts to realize that the actual doctors in the place are not actually taking care of the people. They're just doing a job. Right.
Yep.
And he gets this sense, he meets this like kind of genius guy and has this encounter with him. And in this moment, not to go into the fullness of the movie or something, but he just realizes, man, I have like a new purpose for my life. Like I want to go help people. So he checks himself out of the asylum, goes into medical school, and he's just a wild man. Okay. So he goes into school and his whole goal is just to like love on as many people as he can, right? That makes sense. Yeah. His whole goal is to like love on as many people as he can, and just like he's like going rampant throughout the school, and he finds himself like breaking all of these rules of these traditional medical practices, and it's this prestigious medical school, but he's just like being a clown, and he's not supposed to go into and see patients until the third year, but he just can't help himself because he just like loves people, wants to be around people. He's doing social experiments like out in public and just trying to make people happy, trying to make them light up and all this kind of stuff, and then he eventually opens up his own medical clinic, and it's just like it's an amazing movie, and it's my favorite movie because I want to be him, because I think I get caught up so often in the way things need to be done or should be done, and this guy kind of breaks the status quo in everything that he does. Like his like one of the main professors or like the dean of the school absolutely hates him because he's breaking all these rules, and he just like doesn't care about really the consequences of it, but he's just doing it for the sake of loving people. His roommate, who's like a dedicated, diligent, always studying, he like has wanted to be a doctor since he was 4. He's super mad at him because it seems like he never studies but gets better grades than him on the tests, right? And he's just like, you don't take this seriously. Yeah, so people don't take him seriously. They think that he's just like, he's an idiot, Right. But really, he's like the top of his class, and he's amazing, and he loves people better than all of these people that follow all the rules per se or whatever, or have done everything right. And I look up to that because there's something like, I think there's definitely something in my heart, but I think there's something wild in the human heart as well that makes us want to be free. You know what I mean? Like we want to go and we want to. Well, I guess I'll speak for myself. I just, I just don't like things holding me down, or like certain processes holding me down, or rules holding me down, or anything like that. And I'll obey what I can, but I just want to love people, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the big thing about the movie is that it wasn't that he was rebelling to rebel. It wasn't like he was just trying to break rules. No. But he was so passionate about loving people, he just didn't pay attention to the things that stopped him from doing that.
Right.
Like the things that I was like, well, why can't I just love this person or help this person be cared for?
Right.
And he would go around and he would just do what he could to care for people and to love people, regardless of the actual like rules that were in place, or if it was just like a social awkward thing, it was like socially awkward for him to go do this, but that's actually what helped the people feel better.
Right.
As he was doing all these crazy, goofy things with like the little kids who were in like the pediatric ward, and he was like acting like a clown and doing this stuff that he probably wasn't supposed to be doing, but he was bringing them joy, and that's what he wanted to do.
Right.
Because he actually was really smart, and he knew that the emotional state of people actually helped them get better physically as well.
Yeah.
And he noticed that so many of the patients, he was questioning like, why don't doctors refer to patients by their names? Why are they always like their room number or
Right.
their table number, you know?
Right.
But we should be caring for people.
Right. I remember, he goes into one of the hallways, like he finds like a white jacket. And so he's like, oh, I could actually go see the patients if I just fake that I'm, a third year in school or whatever. So I can go see patients. And he goes with his buddy and they both get these white coats and they're traveling through with these other doctors. And this lead doctor is leading the rest of the doctors through the hallway. And there's this woman.
He's leading the other third year students. Doing
the other third year students. And there's this woman inside the hallway and her leg is like basically blown up and stuff like that, and she's got something going on, and they're basically like I guess diagnosing her while she's like in the middle of the hallway, and it's kind of like embarrassing for her,
she's just sitting there,
because they're just like asking her all these questions like what kind of disease does she have, what's been done for treatment, all of this, and they're saying all these big words or whatever, and then Patch like raises his hand and he's like, what's her name? And the doctor's like kind of like taken back and he looks at his clipboard and he's like, Meredith, and he goes, hi Meredith, because what he's doing is he's making the person human. He's not making them a project, or an agenda or a disease to be fixed, right? He's making them a person, and he sees them as a person. He cares about the fullness of the person, and all the other stuff that'll come secondary as to diagnosing what they have and trying to get them the right treatments and stuff like that. But he sees her as a person. I just love that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, his whole thing was that the job of a doctor shouldn't just be to prolong death, but to increase the quality of life,
right,
for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good movie based on a true story.
Yeah, this guy's a real dude.
He's a real dude. Now, not everything in the movie was exactly how it rolled out, but this real dude was a radical medical student. He graduated, he became a doctor.
Yeah.
But his philosophy was so different to what was, being taught, because he wanted to focus on a holistic caring for the entire person. He didn't believe that you can separate the health of an individual from the health of the community that they're in.
Right.
And their emotional health and their physical health.
Mm-hmm.
So his whole thing was to actually care for people and not just try to treat a disease, but to treat the person. And he says this at the end of the movie. He says, you treat a disease, you win, you lose. You can't control the outcome sometimes. Then he goes, but if you treat the person, I guarantee you every time you'll win.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the outcome is.
Right.
And there's examples in the movie of that kind of thing happen where people were going to be dying, but he spent time with them, increasing their quality of life.
Right.
Right. And then suddenly when their death came, it wasn't just surrounded with morbidness, that there was still some kind of life and happiness that was present.
Yeah.
But I think what the whole point of what we wanted to talk about was that not getting caught up in the typical, do's and don'ts,
mm-hmm.
And neglecting the purpose of loving somebody.
Yeah.
Like the rules that exist. And like we said, Patch didn't ignore the rules just to ignore them or to be a rebel, but he was just focusing on the bigger picture. Like, well, how do I actually care for people?
Right.
He was ignoring rules in order to care for people better.
Right.
And people didn't like him for it. He ran into issues and he got into trouble because it wasn't what people expected and people thought he was weird.
Yeah.
But there were so many lives that he was actually touching and helping make better.
Right.
Because of his willingness to not just go to the standard, but to go beyond the standard in order to love someone.
Right. And he takes things to the extreme. I think we often, we get scared of disobeying or whatever. Maybe disobeying is the wrong word, but or like even moving to a place where the rules don't matter as much, or policies, procedures to some extent. I know that a lot of those things are in place because certain things have happened and there are guidelines to like live by, but sometimes we get so focused on what we should be doing that we miss the objective, or we miss the goal, or we miss the principle behind the rules or behind the procedures, and then we could get boxed in to living so according to a lot of red tape, whether it's in our work areas or ways that we think things should be in relationships, or to the point where we can actually miss the person in front of us, miss love, because we're trying to focus so much on
Right.
on following on those things. And that's what I love about Patch is he didn't allow, the fear of disobeying these things or the fear of getting in trouble or something like that to hold him back from being who he was or from loving the person in front of him. And like he always did things, to the wildest extent, you know what I mean? So there's like a funny scene where they like invite in gynecologists and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he like does up the entire room in just like an inappropriate way, but it's so funny because and they just hate him for it. It's like, can you just do anything normal? Can you do anything according to the way that we want it, the way that it's been lined up, the way that's according to our traditions? But oftentimes like those things actually stifle or can stifle growth, or they can stifle relationships, or they can stifle actually getting to the heart or the fullness of a person because we're following everything to a T, And you see this a lot in businesses, right? Where there's a certain situation and like, it's like, well, we have to follow, this protocol. And I get people are just trying to, follow protocols and something, but sometimes, businesses, they'll miss the needs of the person in order to hold up their like own protocol. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. And then it like leads to this like frustration, and there's nuances to all of this, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously it's like, if I make an exception for you, I got to make an exception. And there's certain things that you have to uphold. But I think the goal of what we're talking about today is living almost, doing what Jesus did in a way of transcending, right? All of these kind of do's and don'ts, these traditions, these ways of living, these things that you should be doing for a higher call or a higher goal.
Right. To actually uphold the purpose of the law or the rules rather than just trying to follow the rules. Right.
And having a higher vision, which is like, we're trying to care for people, we're trying to love people. And then we have all of these, rules and ways that we should be doing that. And so, but sometimes you have to transcend those things or break through those things in order to actually care for the person, right?
Yeah.
Because if you are caring for people and you, like, it's living, like you're caring for a living being. And so a living being is not going to be within all of the stipulations that you put to try and box in how to care for a person.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's like, even like wisdom sometimes says to surpass or to forget about some rules or some laws in order to live out the higher purpose of loving someone.
Yeah.
And this is what Jesus did so well,
Yeah. I was reminded just now of a story that I read in a book called Experiencing God. And it was a business situation where like there's this company, they're hiring somebody. They went through all these interviews and everybody loved the candidate. The CEO was like excited about the guy coming on, but then they did a drug test and he failed the drug test. And so against protocol, the CEO he just felt like he wanted to be the person to talk to him and let him know that, he can't actually join the team because he failed the drug test.
Wow.
And it wasn't to be like mean or anything, but just to have a conversation and to let him know the reason why he can't be on. So normally that would be handled by like the HR department, or, somebody who's more detached from the organization. But he did this. So he met with him and he sat down with the guy, and he was a younger guy, and he told him, what happened, why he can't be brought on the team. But then he did something that was against protocol as well. Wasn't something he was supposed to do. But he told them like, hey, I know you're a young guy, a young man, you're with a couple of kids, and you're newly married. And I think that you might want to reconsider what your decisions that you're making, because you doing drugs and living this way isn't going to be positive for your family. And he said this to him, which is not, he wasn't supposed to do that.
Right. Because there's like certain HR protocols where you stay out of people's lives.
Exactly. Because then he's entering into his personal life.
Right.
But he felt like he wanted to do that because he was caring for the person.
Right.
He cared for the person and ignored that standard or rule. I don't know what kind of legal things could have happened, if he was like, oh, he was trying to control my personal life. I don't know.
Right.
But he had this conversation with him, and then, he let him go. And that same CEO was getting like his teeth cleaned or something. Yeah, I think he was getting his teeth cleaned at a dentist. And the person who was cleaning his teeth actually was the wife of that man that he had let go of.
Holy
And
moly.
this was years later. So years later, he finds out he's getting his teeth cleaned, and it's by the person who is married to that guy.
Jeez.
And she said to him, like, "Oh, I know who you are. Like, my husband.
Wow.
My husband applied for a job for you a long time ago, and he failed. Like, he failed the drug test, and you told me he couldn't have the job." And so he was kind of scared at first. He was like, "Oh, geez, this person has like sharp objects near my teeth."
Right. Yeah.
I'm very vulnerable right now. But she went on to say, because of that conversation you had, he decided to stop doing drugs, and he cleaned up his life, and now he has a stable job, and we're doing really well. So thank you.
Wow.
And if he hadn't broken that protocol, and stayed out of his personal life, he wouldn't have had that conversation. He wouldn't have found out. That story would have been different years later.
Right.
He wouldn't have heard that, wow, this person's life was changed because he took a moment to do something that he wasn't necessarily supposed to do or expected of him on multiple levels. He wasn't meant to be the person to talk to him in the first place.
Right.
And then he wasn't meant to be involved with his personal life at all. But because he did both of those things just to care for the person, that whole family was changed. Like, their whole experience was different.
Right.
Because he did something that was unexpected in order to care.
Right. Yeah.
And it's those kinds of things that we're talking about. It's not like just toss all the rules to the side because those just stop you from loving people.
Right.
But how many times do we have those moments where we want to do something to love somebody or care for somebody, and we think, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. It's supposed to happen like this.
Right.
We don't want to be living in that place where we are doing things just because we're supposed to do them.
Right.
And then we miss out on the actual opportunity
Right.
to love and care for the living person, in front of us or around us.
Yeah. And we can become so blinded by those things, and that's the same thing that happens in the movie. It's like in, I guess, medical practice, it's like they want to limit something called transference, you know what I mean? Which is basically like getting connected with your patients and making sure that those kind of personal things don't come out,
Right.
that kind of stuff for like the safety of the organization. And so people don't like sue if something goes wrong and stuff like that. So you don't get enmeshed in their personal life and they know, or they have, I don't know exactly what all the reasons are for why, And then in Patch's mind, he's like, transference is inevitable. It's like why are we trying so hard to distance ourselves from these people? You know what I mean? To live up for some protocol, and this is the crazy thing too. He seems to live so free from fear, because it's like, why is most of that protocol created? You know what I mean? It's for the, suing or like people taking advantage, which I know has happened, you know what I mean?
Right.
But then we end up allowing fear to create policies and rules that box us in and keep us from missing still the same purpose. And this is really the thing. Love is going to hurt, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to be, it's going to be crazy, and there's going to be some damage done, And I do feel like sometimes in life, taking that like transference principle, right? It's like we don't fully see the people in front of us or the opportunities at our workplace, and we kind of keep a healthy distance because of like the fear that holds us back. You know what I mean? And we talk about this probably in every single episode. That fear of pain, right? Kind of keeps us back, blinds us, and so what we find in the traditions or in the rules is we find a sense of safety. Right. And so the medical practice, right, they have this sense of safety, and then you have this guy Patch coming in who's totally breaking these things, and it's making people feel like up in the air about things, and like, oh, what are you doing? You're breaking all these rules. It's making them uncomfortable. They start hating him. Why? Because all of those things, those traditions that have been around for the transference, not transferring, personality or being around people or connecting with people, all of that is a protection mechanism. And then you see a guy just going straight in.
Right.
And this is exactly what Jesus does when he like stretches out the man's hand on the Sabbath in the temple, where it's like, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. That's the rule, like don't work on the Sabbath. But Jesus is not worried about breaking the Sabbath. He sees the crippled man in front of him.
Right.
And so he sees the crippled man just like the CEO saw the man kind of in need of some advice, or just like an encouragement to say, hey, this isn't healthy for you, right? And he goes up and heals the guy. And then all the Pharisees, the religious leaders, are like, you're healing on the Sabbath. You're like breaking God's law. And he's like, which of you, if you had a sheep, fall into a pit, You know what I mean? On the Sabbath would not like pick it up. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, yeah.
which of you would not, why aren't you stretching out your hand to heal somebody? You're missing the whole purpose of this thing, you know? Or the law that it was, lepers, they had to stay outside of the city, really, or they had to stay in their own designated colonies and stuff. They had to stay away from people, so there was no transference of their disease, right? And then you have Jesus, a guy calling out to Jesus, and Jesus goes up and he touches the guy. It's like, so he's breaking all of these Old Testament even laws, you know what I mean? Or these things that would make you ceremonially unclean if you got near a leper or touched a leper or had that transference. All of those things, all that the law said would make you unclean. He's like, no, I go and I make those things clean. I address those pains. I address those things, right? And that is, it takes such courage to be able to step out into that space and know what you've heard, and maybe like the laws or the regulations or the policies of those certain things, but then being able to transcend those and step out and be able to like love the person in front of you, and that is where we start to see a life that is guided by the Spirit, what the Bible says, where it's like you're actually walking not according to the law, but you're walking according to the fruit of the Spirit, something that grows: the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the kindness, the gentleness, the faithfulness, all self-control, all of this different kind of stuff, right? And then it's almost like it unlocks, like there's nothing that can hinder love at that point, I guess, or like the blinders come off,
where you can see you see things differently, right? After that point, you see things differently. It doesn't all. You're not looking through the lens of do's and don'ts anymore. You're looking through the lens of, how can I love? What does the law of love look like? Rather than trying to follow all the expectations and, even like, there are like social standards that we just create and live by, and it's kind of referenced in the movie a little bit, like trying to break people out of their social, I don't remember what he says, but the things that we've just, our programmed responses, right? When we see a homeless person on the side of the road asking for money or something, we have a programmed response, and we get to choose if we're going to continue in that programmed response or to change our programmed response. I think actually in the movie Patch says something like that. Like we get to choose, we can choose to reprogram our responses to things. Yeah. And it's normal to see, somebody who is homeless on the side of the road and just walk past them. But how many times have we missed opportunities to actually connect with somebody? I know that we have schedules, and oftentimes we're, busy or going from one place to the next. Right. But there's been times where I've just stopped and had a conversation, and said something and acknowledged someone. Right. And that makes a difference in someone's day. Yeah. And I've heard homeless people say that they just, they just want to be acknowledged. Right. Just the feeling that somebody sees them. Seeing somebody smile at them even is different to what they're used to. Right. Because so many of the program responses are to ignore the person because it makes us feel awkward, or, we don't know what to do. So we just kind of walk past, or, but if we just see everybody as human beings who are worthy of love, I think that changes our response. Right. Change our programmed response.
Right. So it's not just even, I guess, like, work policies or something like that, or general even like laws from the Bible, but even like social laws, unspoken laws in social spheres, like you can't say that or you can't do that, and then for the purpose of loving, it's like you can go wild. I've seen that in my own life. It's like when you walk in freedom, you end up freeing other people, and then when they start to realize, man, maybe I don't have to live this way, or maybe I don't have to like obey this social construct or this, or this pattern that I've found myself in. Maybe it's a little different.
Yeah. What's that quote that you mentioned earlier today?
Oh, yeah. About it's by George Bernard Shaw, I think his name is, and he says the reasonable man adapts to the world around him, and he says the unreasonable man makes it his aim to have the world adapt to him. He says, therefore, all progress is based on the unreasonable man.
All progress is based on the unreasonable man.
Yeah.
That's good. And it makes so much sense, because if we're
Right.
always just trying to conform to what we see around us, then we're just going to keep doing the same things.
Right.
We just keep repeating the same patterns, keep
Right.
thinking the same way. And anytime we kind of go outside of that boundary, we'll notice it and we'll try to get back inside the boundary. You know,
Right,
I
right.
shouldn't say that kind of a thing here. I should, focus on these topics.
Right.
But really, if we were to continue to do that, we would never grow. We would never learn. We would never develop. We would never progress as a society.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but it's a vulnerable space to step out of those comfort zones, of those boundaries, because there's the fear of like punishment, there's the fear of judgment from other people that are going to see you as some weirdo who's, living crazy, there's a bunch of fear in living separate and not conforming to those certain social whatever. There's a bunch of fear. And so but we talked about it, before we started recording, is that Patch, he had this idea of, that what made him a doctor was not his degree or the fact that he was in medical school. He just cared for people, and that's what made him a doctor, And so he was going through medical school, and they're trying to kick him out of the school. And I don't know if this part actually happened where he's in like the courtroom or whatever. I don't know if that happened in real life.
Happened in real life.
Yeah. But he's in the courtroom at the end, and they're trying to kick him out, and he's like kind of giving his defense and stuff like that, for everything. And he basically says, you know what, you can take this away from me. You can not give me the piece of paper, but you can't take my spirit. You know what I mean? Like you can't take my soul. And so whether or not you say that I can be a doctor, like I'm never going to stop caring for people. I'm never going to stop taking, caring for their needs and loving on them. You don't get to decide whether or not I'm a doctor or not, And I think there's a crazy confidence that comes when you realize that other people can't take your spirit, or can't take your soul, or can't take the purpose that is on your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that you don't need other people to affirm those things in you in order for you to be okay. You know what I mean? Which affects how you live, because now you're no longer afraid of the punishment of other people, whether socially or in a workspace or whatever, because it's like this job. Now, of course, again, nuances. This doesn't mean that you just do whatever you want, but this job doesn't make me who I am, right? Or this degree doesn't make me who I am, or this person doesn't make me who I am, or the opinions of others don't make me who I am. And when you start to let go of those things, next thing you have more of a confidence to actually transcend all the things that people or policies or socially whatever is needed to do or that should be done, because it's like I don't get any of my purpose from that in the first place. Right?
Yeah.
So then there's a foundation for how you're actually able to live. And I think that's how Jesus was able to do it almost so naturally, is because his identity, his purpose, his calling didn't come from anybody besides his Father. So he didn't need people to approve him in some religious system or to identify him as the Messiah in order for him to know who he was and what he was called to. He knew that he was called to, basically heal the sick and free the captives from prison. And like, that was his call, the Isaiah 61, that that's the first thing that he says in the temple, right? It's like, I've come to release and speak good news to the poor and do all this, crazy good stuff. And then he gets the confirmation in his baptism from his Father. This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased. And then after that, it's like, well, that's my call, and I'm already affirmed by my Father. So I don't need this. I don't need the system to approve me in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To accept me in that. And because he didn't need the approval or of the regulation or of the law or the safety of those people validating him, he was able to transcend it. Right? He was able to move past it because he wasn't in need of it.
Yeah.
To keep him safe or to affirm him or to validate his experience or who he was.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that kind of clarity, like that clarity that we don't need the other stuff to approve of us.
Right.
And like that resolve to care for somebody regardless of what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to be so resolved to care for other people that things don't stop me from caring from someone when I have the opportunity.
Right.
You know, I don't want to go through life asking, like finding an opportunity to love someone and then thinking through all the social standards that, you know, whether or not they fit in.
Right.
Right. Well, this model of doing this fit in with, you know, what I've seen or what people expect. I just want to care for the person.
Right.
I don't want to try to do it the way that is expected or, you know, yeah, what you said. I think you said it very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the system or the something outside of ourselves that we need to get approval from in order to love someone.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, and that allows you to be who you are, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It allows you to be who you are, and I think the world needs who we are. Like the real
the real us.
The real us, uninhibited, you know? Uninhibited by, you know, things that are kind of binding us up and keeping us in those places, and there is just a weird seemingly natural thing in humans that when there is a law placed on them, it doesn't produce very good fruit. You know, it seems to, you know, I mean, the Bible talks about it in Romans 7. It's like sin kind of uses the law to make us confused and want to do what we don't want to do, and it kind of like there's an abridgment to like our heart being able to be free and actually to love in a way. Not that those policies or those laws are bad in themselves, but that like our own hearts, it's almost like they were meant to be free, you know? And like when there's a weight put on them or like a certain stipulation or a rule, like it naturally, I mean, it's not hard to notice a kid when you tell him not to do something, he'll end up doing it, you know? Because it, you know, like it kind of causes something like, don't tell me what to do. And I don't think that's just like a natural selfishness in us necessarily, but I think it's like our hearts are meant to come to life in those things, you know? Yeah,
there's like a natural response toward freedom. I don't think that having rules always results in somebody wanting to rebel against them.
No, not always.
I think that depends on the person.
Maybe I'm just talking about me.
For you, that does happen. But for some people, the rules bring them a sense of comfort or peace, you know? It's like, okay, I will do these things. But I think that in either case, it doesn't always promote freedom, right? It doesn't always promote a sense of a strong sense of self, of like I don't know if autonomy is the right word, but just a confidence that I can make the right choice or that I can do the right thing and that it's inside of me, you know? Because then sometimes we can use rules and laws as crutches to not actually do what we feel inside of us to do. Right. Because we just follow the rule.
Yes.
Even if there's something inside of us that's calling us to something else, to maybe the bigger picture, you know, like healing the man on the Sabbath. Right. But we think, but I need to follow the rule, so I'm just not going to do that. Right. But it feels safe, like we talked about. It feels safe for us. John Maxwell says that a leader should be bigger on the inside than they are on the outside. And I think what he means by that is that there is this very strong sense of self and identity and confidence that it's not dependent on what's going on the outside. That there is a solid foundation of who this person is so that they can respond to the things around them and not be dictated by the things around them. And when we come to that place, we do find that freedom, right? To make the choice, right? To care for the person regardless of what the outcome might look like, you know, or the repercussions that we might want to avoid. But when we can actually stand on a solid foundation and know the reason we're doing something, I think we find that freedom and that clarity, and it stays, you know, a freedom and clarity that lasts. Yeah, 'cause it's not based on, well, this person said it's okay, so I'm going to do it. Or this person said it's okay, so I'm going to do it. Right. But having clarity on that purpose, you know, that purpose within us that drives us forward.
Right. And then that also takes like a significant trust that those things can be more of like a written law inside your heart. kind of what scripture talks about is like that the laws will actually be written on your heart. Like they're not going to be outside of you, external, right? That they'll actually be written inside. And then the trust in our own selves to make right decisions in different moments for different things. You know what I mean? To actually be able to transcend that and to trust that, you know, that is your heart. And I think that comes through, obviously that gets developed, right? And you learn, you know what I mean? You learn what is right to do in certain situations and when is good and when is not good to maybe follow a certain policy, procedure, those different types of things, right? And you kind of learn the nuances of that. But what a crazy and also kind of fearful reality that we can actually choose. You know, or that we can actually step into transcending those things, you know, because I think if I was in Jesus's day, I would be the one, just based on how my mind works, that would see a crippled person and be like, this is so weird. I mean, I want to heal them, but it says not to like work on the Sabbath, and now I don't really know, like, you know, I feel like I would have that tension in my heart. It's like, I'm not supposed to work on the Sabbath, but this person has this, and I do see this, but I also like feel like I need to obey, you know what I mean? My religious leaders, that kind of brought me up, you know? So having the courage to actually step in there and follow what's actually written on your heart or renewed in your spirit, regenerated in you, and following that, that's huge. And, you know, like good old George Bernard, you know, that's where the progress is made, or that's when the change is made, or Jesus was a revolutionary in that way.
The unreasonable person.
Yeah, he was unreasonable, you know, to the people he was around at that time, you know. I mean, the Bible even says like the way he went about things, it was foolishness. You know what I mean? Like the cross was foolishness. It made no sense. It seemed like it
reasonable.
Yeah, it didn't match any human wisdom or logic. It was outside of human wisdom and logic. He was able to confidently walk in that, you know. And I see these people and, you know, coming back to like, that's who I want to be, Patch Adams, you know,
right?
I see these people who it seems like they find it so easy to just make those decisions, you know, and to just be like full-hearted, like they give their self full-heartedly to just being like, nah, that doesn't matter, let's go after this. And then I'm like, what? How do you do that? You know, like, and it's so funny because people would usually think like, oh, Aaron, he doesn't, you know, think about much of any of that stuff, you know, like from just based on my personality, because I'm a wild man. But I do genuinely care about honoring people and honoring systems and things that are put in place. And I even to this day have a struggle balancing those things in my own heart. How do I live in this Patch Adams way, or this Jesus way, or this transcendent way, and then also honor the things that are put in place to help me in that, you know? But I see people that seem to be able to do it just like at the drop of a hat. It's like, oh yeah, that doesn't really matter. Like, just go here. And I'm like, okay, what? Wait, like you don't find a struggle with that, you know? Or like,
right.
Like, how do you do that? And it seems like they live okay, you know? Like, and actually they're the people that inspire me and that I look up to and that I want to be like, you know?
Right.
Is people that can do that. And maybe that's also just because I'm younger and I'm 26 and I see some of these people that have learned this, you know, like have learned like, hey, you can't always follow all of these things. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and you got to do it for the purpose of loving another individual. And once you get used to that space, that uncomfortability, you can step into it and you can change the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, so oh man, I just look up to that so much. I want to be like that.
There was a situation that happened. I think it might have been during Christmas, this past Christmas, COVID, everything was different, but we were at work, we were reallocating a lot of funds, and we were wanting to initiate some generosity initiative, like do some generosity initiatives, you know? And I remember having a conversation with somebody, and they asked, well, like, okay, so what's a reasonable amount to put towards this? And my first response was like, I don't want to do what's reasonable. Wow. I want to do what's extravagant, you know?
Right.
Like, what's the most we can do?
Right.
I don't want to do the reasonable thing, because when it comes to loving people, we shouldn't be thinking about what's the most reasonable way we can love someone.
Wow, that's so good.
But what's the most extravagant way we can love somebody? And why not go for that? Because if we just do what's reasonable...
Darryl, you preaching right now, bro. This is good.
If we just do what's reasonable, that's not going to make much of a difference.
Right.
You know how much... I feel like there could be so much waste that happens when we try to be reasonable,
Right.
because we can do things extravagantly and have such a bigger impact,
Right.
such a greater impact whenever we try to think through a different lens.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do, is like to love people.
Right.
And if we're trying to do that reasonably, it's like, well, wait a second. Like,
Right.
the purpose of everything we're doing is to love people well.
Right.
Let's not think about what's reasonable or, what seems to be this
Wow.
kind of makes sense, so let's do it like
Right.
this. But no, let's go all out.
Right.
Why are we going to hold back if
Right.
that's what we're here to do?
It's like what Hebrews says. It's like outdo one another. And
and
showing love and like
showing
loving
love and
each other,
good works. Uh-huh.
It's like almost this fun competition thing of how can we just like extravagantly love people,
Yeah.
and there's certain moments that I've felt that was just like, oh, that was extravagant love. And this is what Patch Adams does. I love like the scene at the end of the movie. This old lady, he's like, "What's your dream, darling?" In the beginning of the movie. And she's like, "I want to swim in a pool full of noodles." And he's like, Okay, how about a balloon? He like gives her a balloon, but at the end of the movie they get this giant pool and they fill it with noodles. And he swims with her, and it's like all these people around cheering and clapping and stuff like that. And he makes this entire pool for her so she can swim in a pool full of noodles. How unreasonable is it to go buy that much pasta and cook it and put it in a kiddie pool just so this lady could have her dream of swimming in a pool of noodles?
Right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's unreasonable. But that was like the whole reason he did that is because actually the other guy at the beginning of the movie that actually hated Patch because he was like the doctor, he like actually came to Patch for help at the end of the movie. He kind of humbled himself and was like, I can't make this lady eat,
Right, yeah.
He's like, I've done everything. He's like, I've studied all of the books. I've gotten some of the highest grades in the class, but I can't make this woman eat. And he's like, Patch, I need your help. Like, you have a way with people. And Patch is like, okay. So he does this giant pool of noodles and it lifts this woman's spirit, you know what I mean? And like that is what brings healing about, is this unreasonable kind of reckless, craziness, And I think that's just the way I want to be. And like, what even, I mean, we've talked about getting your mind off of yourself, right?
Right.
What a way to get your mind off yourself is just like, how can I extravagantly love somebody that doesn't make sense, that like, might be breaking some of the rules and stuff like that, but like just is going to be so much fun and so awesome. And this person's just going to experience life from it. It's like love totally breaks through that,
Sorry,
go keep going.
I was thinking, like, can you imagine if that's the way if God loved us reasonably?
Right. I was thinking the same thing, bro. I was thinking the same thing.
If God's love for us was reasonable, I think life would look a lot different.
Yeah.
I think Jesus wouldn't have come to the cross. That wasn't a reasonable thing that happened.
Yeah.
That was extravagant. And that he loves us with an extravagant love, going way above and beyond.
Right.
Anything that we could, we could never earn the slightest amount of what he has for us.
Right.
But if he just gave us what was reasonable, life would look a lot different.
A lot different. Yeah.
When we did nothing.
Yeah.
Paul talks about we've done nothing to earn this, and so we can boast about nothing. We can't boast about the grace and forgiveness that God has for us because we haven't done anything to earn it.
Right.
And that's an extravagant example of love when there was no reason to give it.
Right. But you just give it anyway.
That's unreasonable.
Just lavish it out. Lavish it out. Yes. I had a moment like that. I mean, it's so crazy to be a recipient of that, of just like that deeper thought kind of love, that comes through. I mean, we talked about Christina in the beginning, but we read this book called Who Moved My Cheese? And in this book, there was like this great phrase that says, it was this question asked in the book, like, what would you do if you weren't afraid?
Yeah.
And it really just stuck out to me. It's like, what if I lived my life that way? It's like, what if I lived my life just like asking myself, well, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And then whatever it would be, just doing that, And I'm still working on it. But this past week, I like came into her office and like, was looking at her couch and it had this scroll on the couch and she's like, open that up. She's like, I got a gift for you or whatever. And we read this book probably 2 months ago, right? 3 months ago, something like that. We all read it together. And I open it up and it just says, what would you what would you do if you weren't afraid?
No way. That's awesome.
And like it was this big scroll that I could like put up my wall. I just start crying. You know what I mean? I just start tearing up because it was like you remembered that from 3 months ago. You know what I mean? Like that really stood out to me. And then you got me a scroll that said it's that I can put up on my wall and remind myself like what would I do if I wasn't afraid? You know? And it was this extravagant love. And Christine, honestly, she's one of these people that I look up to where it seems like she's just uninhibited in like certain decisions. Like she'll just do stuff and I'll be like, oh my gosh, how are you okay with like freedom? Yeah, she's got a lot of freedom. It's like, how are you okay just making decisions like this? You know what I mean? I'll just be like, well, what about this? Don't we have to do this? She's like, nah. You know, she's like, let's just do this. I'm like, okay. You know, it's encouraging for me to have people in my life that are like that because it breaks me out of that mold where it reconfigures my programming a little bit.
Right.
You know, and helps me focus. Oh, wait, maybe, you know, she's right. Maybe this is the most important thing and that this stuff, you know, this side stuff doesn't really matter as much. You know what I mean? Like these details that I'm stressing over, maybe it's just about loving people and making sure that they're okay. And maybe we can live according to a different law, you know what I mean? Like a different spirit, you know, like the policy of heaven, you know, like we can live according to that law of love. But yeah, I think it changes the way you love because then your heart's free to actually do it. Yeah. You know, like your heart's free to actually do it and it changes your focus, you know, your perspective on things, how you relate with people. Cause it's like, man, I'm out of the programming right now. You know what I mean? I'm just loving people, you know, and that changes a lot, you know, and then your heart is free. You could have the courage to follow it. Yeah. That's good.
That's where we want to live.
For sure. Anything else, Darrell? Young Darrell?
No, I think that's it.
Young baby Darrell. All right, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Love extravagantly.
Love extravagantly. Live freely. Figure out, I guess, what it means to transcend maybe the programming that you've been living in, as we do as well. Trying to figure out how to live according to rules and all this different kind of stuff that I just want to throw out. But that's not the goal. It's to be able to transcend that for a greater purpose and to live freely, to walk lightly. To walk humbly with our God. Yeah. Well, this is Aaron.
This is Darryl.
Signing out for your brain on God. Make sure that you follow us, Spotify, Instagram, iTunes, podcasts, all of the stuff, YouTube. We love you guys. And we'll see you next week. Peace out.
Peace out.